The thunderous roar of gunfire tears through the morning mist. 3,000 matchlock guns flash in unison, their deadly volley cutting down hundreds of charging cavalry. This isn't a scene from European warfare. This is feudal Japan, 1575, at the Battle of Nagashino. And the man behind this revolutionary display of firepower? A samurai lord who would change the face of warfare forever, Oda Nobunaga. You might think you know about samurai warfare. Noble warriors crossing swords in single combat, fighting with honor and their legendary katana blades. But the truth is far more fascinating. In the story I'm about to tell you, we'll discover how one brilliant and ruthless daimyo brought gunpowder weapons to Japan and transformed warfare in ways that would influence military strategy for centuries to come. Picture yourself in 16th century Japan. The country is fractured into warring states, each controlled by powerful warlords vying for supremacy. Into this chaos steps a young lord named Oda Nobunaga, heir to a small domain in Owari province. While his contemporaries cling to traditional warfare, Nobunaga sees something revolutionary in the strange weapons brought by Portuguese traders, the matchlock arquebus, or as the Japanese would call it, the Tanegashima. But this isn't just a story about guns. It's about a visionary who understood that technology alone doesn't win wars. It's how you use it. Nobunaga would combine these firearms with revolutionary tactics, fortress designs, and training methods that would make the European military commanders of his time look primitive by comparison. Let's start in 1549, when a young Nobunaga first encounters these foreign weapons. The Portuguese had only introduced guns to Japan 7 years earlier, and most samurai dismissed them as crude weapons unworthy of a warrior. They were loud, slow to reload, and considered beneath the dignity of the samurai class. But where others saw a barbarian's tool, Nobunaga saw the future. Within months, he began acquiring every firearm he could lay his hands on. But more importantly, he started doing something unprecedented. He created dedicated infantry units of gunners, recruited from common peasants. This was revolutionary in a society where warfare was traditionally dominated by samurai cavalry. Nobunaga understood something that many modern military leaders still grapple with: the democratizing power of firearms. A peasant with 2 weeks of arquebus training could kill a samurai with decades of martial training. This wasn't just a military innovation. It was a social revolution in the making. He established weapon foundries throughout his domain, standardizing the production of guns and ammunition. Think of it as the world's first military-industrial complex. His gunsmiths weren't just copying Portuguese designs, they were improving them, creating weapons that were often superior to their European counterparts. But Nobunaga's genius didn't stop at acquisition and production. He fundamentally rethought how battles should be fought. Traditional Japanese warfare centered around individual samurai combat and cavalry charges. Nobunaga created something entirely new: rotating volley fire. His arquebus units were trained to fire in 3 ranks. While one rank fired, another reloaded, and the third waited ready. This maintained a constant rate of fire that could devastate enemy formations. If this sounds familiar, it's because European armies wouldn't develop similar tactics until decades later. Consider this. In 1560, at the Battle of Okehazama, Nobunaga was severely outnumbered by the army of Imagawa Yoshimoto, facing 25,000 troops with just 3,000 of his own. A traditional daimyo would have fortified his position and prepared for a siege. Instead, Nobunaga used his gunners to create a diversion, then led a daring raid through a thunderstorm that caught the Imagawa army completely off guard. The result? A decisive victory that launched his path to power. But it wasn't just the weapons themselves that made Nobunaga's armies so effective. He implemented strict training regimens, standardized drill commands, and created a merit-based promotion system that was centuries ahead of its time. In an age where military leadership was based almost entirely on hereditary status, Nobunaga was promoting skilled commanders regardless of their social class. This meritocracy extended to his gunners. The best shooters were rewarded with higher pay and status, creating a professional class of artillery specialists. He even organized shooting competitions with substantial prizes, encouraging his troops to constantly improve their accuracy and speed. What's particularly fascinating is how Nobunaga combined these firearms with innovative fortress design. Traditional Japanese castles were built on mountains, following the principle that height equals advantage. Nobunaga revolutionized castle architecture by building his fortresses on plains, surrounded by wide moats and multiple layers of defense specifically designed to maximize the effectiveness of his gun emplacements. Take a moment to imagine a traditional Japanese army of the 1560s. Proud samurai in elaborate armor, each fighting as an individual hero, supported by ashigaru, foot soldiers, who were often treated as little more than cannon fodder. Now, picture Nobunaga's revolutionary army, disciplined ranks of gunners moving with clockwork precision, supported by spearmen in standardized armor, all operating as a single cohesive unit. This wasn't just a military force, it was the world's first modern army. The turning point came at the Battle of Onagawa in 1570. Here, Nobunaga's forces faced the combined armies of the Asai and Asakura clans. Traditional wisdom would have called for a series of individual duels and cavalry charges. Instead, Nobunaga deployed his gunners in a revolutionary formation known as the Yumi Yatepo, bow-arrow gun formation. Think of it as a 16th century version of combined arms warfare. The front ranks were armed with long spears, creating a wall of steel that would make any cavalry charge suicidal. Behind them stood the arquebusiers in 3 rotating ranks, maintaining a constant barrage of fire. The rear ranks held archers who could provide high-angle fire over their companions' heads. This was military innovation that wouldn't be seen in Europe for another century. But Nobunaga's genius went beyond just battlefield tactics. He understood something that modern military theorists call force multiplication. He knew that the psychological impact of his guns could be just as important as their physical effect. At the Battle of Nagashino in 1575, he had his gunners fire volleys into the air before the battle began, creating a thunderous display that terrified both the enemy horses and their riders. Let's talk about Nagashino in detail, because it represents everything revolutionary about Nobunaga's approach to warfare. The battle began with Takeda Katsuyori, heir to Japan's most famous cavalry tradition, leading 12,000 troops against Nobunaga's position. The Takeda clan was renowned for their cavalry charges. Their horsemen were considered the finest in Japan, and their usual tactics involved rapid attacks that broke enemy formations before they could respond. Nobunaga was ready for them. He had positioned his 3,000 arquebusiers behind a series of wooden palisades, arranged in a zigzag pattern. These weren't just simple barriers. They were carefully designed with firing ports at just the right height for kneeling gunners. More importantly, they were staggered in such a way that charging cavalry would have to slow down and change direction multiple times to approach them. But here's where it gets really interesting. Nobunaga had studied the effective range of his firearms and the speed of charging cavalry. He placed markers on the battlefield at specific distances, allowing his gunners to adjust their aim based on the enemy's position. Think of it as a primitive form of the modern range card used by military snipers. The battle began in the rain, conditions that should have made the matchlock guns useless. But Nobunaga had prepared for this too. His troops had been trained to keep their powder dry using waterproof covers, and he had ordered them to test fire their weapons that morning to ensure reliability. When the Takeda cavalry charged, they faced something unprecedented in military history. 3,000 guns firing in coordinated volleys, their shots carefully timed to hit the horses at different points in their charge. The result was devastating. The finest cavalry in Japan was cut to pieces. But it wasn't just the guns that won the day. It was the combination of technology, tactics, and training. The wooden palisades forced the Takeda cavalry to bunch up into perfect targets. The rotating firing lines meant there was never a pause in the barrage. Even when some horsemen made it through the gunfire, they found themselves facing ranks of spearmen who had been positioned to protect the gunners. This battle changed Japanese warfare forever, but more than that, it demonstrated principles of combined arms warfare that wouldn't become standard in Western armies until the Napoleonic era. Nobunaga had created a system where different types of troops worked together, each compensating for the other's weaknesses. His innovations weren't limited to just guns and tactics. Nobunaga revolutionized military logistics as well. He created dedicated supply lines, established forward bases for his campaigns, and implemented a system of food and ammunition distribution that kept his armies functioning efficiently in the field. He even standardized the caliber of his arquebus ammunition, a concept that European armies wouldn't adopt for another century. Think about that for a moment. While European armies were still relying on mercenaries and feudal levies, Nobunaga had created a professional army with standardized weapons, unified training, and sophisticated logistics. He wasn't just fighting battles, he was inventing modern warfare. But Nobunaga's revolution went far beyond the battlefield. His military innovations triggered social changes that would reshape Japanese society itself. Imagine you're a samurai in 16th century Japan, born into a warrior class that has dominated society for centuries. Your entire identity is built around the mastery of traditional weapons and the code of Bushido. Then suddenly, a peasant with 2 weeks of training can kill you from 100 yards away. This wasn't just a military change, it was an earthquake that shook the very foundations of Japanese social order. Nobunaga's armies didn't just break military traditions, they shattered social barriers. In his gunner units, peasant farmers fought alongside low-ranking samurai. Performance, not birth, determined rank and rewards. This might sound obvious to modern ears, but in feudal Japan, it was revolutionary. Think of it as Japan's first major step toward meritocracy. Consider the story of Kinoshita Tokichiro, a sandal-bearer who rose through Nobunaga's ranks to become one of his most trusted generals. Later known as Toyotomi Hideyoshi, he would eventually become Japan's supreme ruler. This kind of social mobility was unthinkable before Nobunaga's innovations. It's comparable to a modern corporation promoting a janitor to CEO based purely on ability, except in a society far more rigidly hierarchical than our own. But Nobunaga's revolution extended beyond just military organization. He understood something that modern business leaders call vertical integration. He didn't just arm his troops with guns, he created an entire military-industrial complex. He established foundries to produce firearms, powder mills to make gunpowder, and training centers to create skilled artisans. He standardized production methods and implemented quality control measures that wouldn't become common in Europe for another century. Let's look at his castle town of Azuchi as an example. Built in 1576, this wasn't just a military fortress. It was a planned city designed to support his new style of warfare. The lower town contained foundries, craftsmen's quarters, and merchants' districts, all organized to efficiently produce and supply his armies. The castle itself was revolutionary, with gun platforms integrated into its design and storage facilities for gunpowder and ammunition. Think of it as a 16th century version of a modern military base combined with an industrial park. This integration of military and economic power had profound effects on Japanese society. Traditional samurai had looked down on merchants and craftsmen, considering commerce beneath their dignity. Nobunaga's system made these classes essential to military success. A skilled gunsmith became as valuable as a samurai warrior. This shift in social values would eventually help transform Japan from a feudal society into a commercial powerhouse. Nobunaga also revolutionized military training. Traditional samurai training was individualistic, focused on personal combat skills. Nobunaga's training system emphasized unit cohesion and coordinated action. His armies trained together regularly, practicing complex maneuvers and synchronized firing drills. This was more like modern military training than traditional samurai warfare. He established shooting ranges where gunners could practice regularly, with rewards for accuracy and speed. He created standardized drill manuals and command structures. His officers were expected to be literate and understand complex tactical diagrams, a requirement that would have been unusual for medieval European commanders, let alone Japanese samurai. The psychological impact of these changes was enormous. Traditional samurai warfare had been personal. You saw your opponent's face, crossed swords with him, perhaps even exchanged names before combat. Gunpowder warfare was impersonal, anonymous, industrial. Some historians argue that this shift helped prepare Japan for modernization, breaking down the psychological barriers between traditional warrior culture and modern military organization. But perhaps most revolutionary was Nobunaga's attitude toward foreign technology and ideas. At a time when many Japanese leaders were suspicious of foreign influences, he actively sought out new innovations. He studied European military manuals, interrogated Portuguese traders about Western tactics, and even had his own men experiment with foreign-style armor and equipment. This openness to innovation extended beyond just military matters. Nobunaga was fascinated by European clockwork mechanisms, telescope designs, and navigation instruments. He saw how these technologies could be adapted and improved for Japanese use. Nobunaga's innovations didn't die with him at Honnoji Temple in 1582. In fact, his military revolution was just beginning. His successors, first Toyotomi Hideyoshi, then Tokugawa Ieyasu, would build upon his foundations to create one of the most sophisticated military systems in the world. Think of it as the iPhone effect. Once a revolutionary technology is introduced, its influence continues to evolve and reshape society long after its creator is gone. The Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, often called the largest and most important single battle in Japanese history, demonstrated how thoroughly Nobunaga's military innovations had transformed warfare. Both armies used sophisticated gun tactics, coordinated unit movements, and complex logistics that would have been impossible before Nobunaga's reforms. The winner, Tokugawa Ieyasu, would go on to establish a shogunate that would rule Japan for over 250 years. But here's where the story takes a fascinating turn. By the 1630s, Japan began to restrict gun manufacture and usage. This wasn't because the technology had failed, quite the opposite. The Tokugawa shogunate recognized that guns were too democratizing, too destabilizing to their new peace. They had learned Nobunaga's lesson perhaps too well. Firearms could make any peasant the equal of a samurai, and that was dangerous to the social order they wanted to maintain. This leads us to one of history's great ironies. Japan, which under Nobunaga had become perhaps the most advanced gunpowder warfare state in the world, deliberately chose to limit this technology. When Commodore Perry's black ships arrived in 1853, Japan had fewer guns than it had possessed in the 1600s. But the organizational and tactical innovations Nobunaga had introduced remained, lying dormant like seeds waiting for the right moment to sprout. That moment came with the Meiji Restoration in 1868. When Japan decided to modernize, it did so with astounding speed. Many historians argue that this rapid modernization was possible because of the organizational foundations Nobunaga had laid 3 centuries earlier. His systems of standardization, merit-based promotion, and integrated military-industrial production provided a blueprint for Japan's modern military. Consider this. When Japan defeated Russia in 1905, becoming the first Asian nation to defeat a European power in modern times, they used tactics that would have been familiar to Nobunaga. Their victory at the Battle of Tsushima involved coordinated fire, careful range finding, and the integration of multiple weapons systems, all principles that Nobunaga had pioneered at Nagashino. But Nobunaga's influence extends beyond just military matters. His approach to technology and innovation created a template that Japan would follow for centuries. Just as he had adapted and improved upon Portuguese firearms, modern Japanese industries would take Western technologies and perfect them. From the Meiji era's modernization to Sony's consumer electronics revolution, you can see echoes of Nobunaga's pragmatic approach to foreign innovation. His organizational innovations also had lasting effects. The Japanese corporate system of lifetime employment and promotion based on merit rather than birth can trace its roots to Nobunaga's military reforms. When you see a Japanese company promoting from within and emphasizing group harmony over individual achievement, you're seeing organizational principles that Nobunaga introduced to his armies. Even Japan's famous attention to quality control and standardization has roots in Nobunaga's military reforms. His insistence on standardized ammunition and regular weapon inspections set a precedent for the kind of careful quality control that would later make Made in Japan a mark of excellence. The integration of military and industrial production that Nobunaga pioneered would prove crucial during Japan's rapid industrialization. When Japan began building its modern military in the late 1800s, they followed his model of establishing government-controlled arsenals and standardized production methods. The Meiji government's program of Rich Country Strong Army, Fukoku Kyohei, was in many ways an update of Nobunaga's comprehensive approach to military power. But perhaps Nobunaga's most important legacy was psychological. He showed that Japan could not only adopt foreign technologies, but improve upon them. He demonstrated that traditional ways could be overthrown when better methods were available. Most importantly, he proved that Japan could compete with and even surpass Western military technology. These lessons would prove crucial during Japan's modernization and continue to influence Japanese attitudes toward technology and innovation today. Let's put Nobunaga's achievements in global perspective. While European armies were still fighting in medieval formations, relying on knights and mercenaries, this Japanese warlord was developing military concepts that wouldn't become standard in the West for centuries. Modern military historians have identified several principles in Nobunaga's warfare that eerily prefigure modern military doctrine. Take the concept of force multiplication, using technology and tactics to make your military force more effective than raw numbers would suggest. At Nagashino, Nobunaga's 3,000 gunners defeated a much larger force through superior positioning, coordinated fire, and integrated defenses. This same principle is central to modern military thinking, from the U.S. Army's emphasis on technological superiority to Israel's focus on qualitative military edge. Or consider his understanding of what we now call combined arms warfare. Modern military doctrine emphasizes the coordination of different combat arms, infantry, armor, artillery, air support, working together to maximize effectiveness. Nobunaga was doing this in the 16th century, combining gunners, spearmen, cavalry, and archers in carefully coordinated units. His Yumiya Teppo formation was essentially a Renaissance version of modern combined arms tactics. Nobunaga's approach to castle design also anticipated modern military architecture. Traditional Japanese castles were built on heights, following the ancient principle that elevated ground provides tactical advantage. Nobunaga's castles, built on plains with integrated gun platforms and supply facilities, more closely resembled modern military bases. The layout of Azuchi Castle, with its combined military, industrial, and administrative functions, bears a striking resemblance to modern military-industrial complexes. His innovations in military training and organization were equally forward-thinking. The modern concept of fire and maneuver, where one unit provides covering fire while another moves, was basic to Nobunaga's tactics. His three-rank rotating volley fire system was essentially the same principle used by modern infantry in fire team movements. But perhaps most remarkably, Nobunaga understood something that modern military theorists call the Revolution in Military Affairs, RMA. The idea that technological innovations must be accompanied by changes in organization, doctrine, and training to be truly effective. When the U.S. military underwent its own RMA in the 1990s, emphasizing precision weapons and information warfare, they were following the same principle Nobunaga had demonstrated with firearms. New technology requires new ways of fighting. Consider his approach to military intelligence and information warfare. Nobunaga maintained an extensive network of spies and informants, used psychological warfare tactics, and understood the importance of controlling information flow. He would deliberately leak false information about his troop movements, spread rumors to demoralize enemy forces, and use demonstrations of firepower to intimidate opponents. These are all techniques that modern military forces consider crucial to information warfare. His understanding of logistics was equally modern. Today's military planners talk about the tooth-to-tail ratio, the balance between combat troops and support personnel. Nobunaga created an extensive support system for his armies, with dedicated supply lines, ammunition manufacturing, and maintenance facilities. He understood that an army's effectiveness depends as much on its supply system as its fighting strength. Even his approach to military innovation has modern parallels. The U.S. military's concept of rapid acquisition, quickly adopting and adapting new technologies for military use, mirrors Nobunaga's rapid development of firearm technology. His weapon foundries were constantly experimenting with improvements in gun design, ammunition, and firing mechanisms. But perhaps the most modern aspect of Nobunaga's military revolution was his understanding of what we now call asymmetric warfare. He recognized that technological superiority could overcome traditional advantages in numbers or cavalry strength. This principle, that superior technology and tactics can defeat a numerically superior force, remains central to modern military thinking. The parallels between Nobunaga's innovations and modern military concepts go beyond mere coincidence. They demonstrate fundamental principles of warfare that transcend time and culture. When the U.S. military emphasizes precision weapons, combined arms operations, and integrated command structures, they're building on principles that Nobunaga discovered through practical experience 4 centuries ago. As we look at the modern world of warfare and technology, Nobunaga's influence continues to echo through time. His revolutionary approach to military innovation offers crucial lessons for today's rapidly evolving technological landscape. Whether it's the development of autonomous weapons, cyber warfare, or space-based military systems, the principles he established remain remarkably relevant. Consider how modern militaries are grappling with the integration of artificial intelligence and autonomous systems. Just as Nobunaga had to overcome samurai resistance to firearms, today's military leaders face similar challenges in adopting AI-driven warfare. His solution, demonstrating overwhelming effectiveness while maintaining strict control and standardization, provides a template for managing revolutionary military technologies. The current revolution in military affairs, driven by information technology and precision weapons, follows patterns that would have been familiar to Nobunaga. His understanding that new weapons require new tactics, new training methods, and new organizational structures is exactly what modern military forces are discovering as they adapt to drone warfare and cyber operations. But Nobunaga's legacy extends beyond the military sphere. His approach to innovation, rapidly adopting foreign technology, improving upon it, and integrating it into existing systems, mirrors the strategy of many successful modern companies. When you see Japanese firms like Toyota or Sony taking Western innovations and perfecting them, you're watching Nobunaga's principles at work in the corporate world. His organizational innovations also offer lessons for modern leadership. The merit-based promotion system he established, his emphasis on standardization and quality control, and his integration of different organizational functions all anticipate modern management principles. When a modern corporation implements lean manufacturing processes or establishes quality control circles, they're building on organizational foundations that Nobunaga laid. The story of Nobunaga's military revolution also reminds us that technological advancement alone is not enough. Success requires the vision to see how new technologies can be used effectively, the organizational skill to implement them systematically, and the leadership to overcome institutional resistance to change. These challenges face every organization trying to adapt to technological change, whether it's a military force adopting new weapons or a company implementing artificial intelligence. Perhaps most importantly, Nobunaga's story demonstrates that revolutionary innovation often comes from unexpected places. In the 16th century, few would have expected a Japanese warlord to develop military tactics more sophisticated than those used in Europe. Today, as technology continues to reshape warfare and society, revolutionary innovations might come from equally unexpected sources. As we face our own revolutionary changes in military technology, autonomous weapons, cyber warfare, AI-driven command systems, Nobunaga's example offers valuable lessons. His systematic approach to innovation, his understanding of the relationship between technology and organization, and his ability to envision new ways of warfare remain relevant nearly half a millennium after his death. The next time you hear about a military force using rotating teams to maintain continuous drone coverage, or a corporation implementing standardized quality control across its global operations, remember, these modern innovations have their roots in the revolutionary vision of a 16th century Japanese warlord who dared to imagine warfare in an entirely new way. Nobunaga's story reminds us that true innovation isn't just about adopting new technology. It's about having the vision to see how that technology can transform the world, the courage to break with tradition when necessary, and the organizational skill to turn vision into reality. These principles remain as vital today as they were in feudal Japan. In the end, Oda Nobunaga was more than just a successful warlord. He was a revolutionary innovator who fundamentally changed how humans wage war. His legacy lives on not just in military history, but in every organization that seeks to harness new technology to transform itself and the world around it. From the battlefields of 16th century Japan to the cyber battle space of the 21st century, the principles he established continue to shape our understanding of warfare, innovation, and organizational change. As we face our own technological revolutions, we would do well to remember the lessons of the samurai lord who dared to revolutionize warfare. Thank you for watching this documentary about Oda Nobunaga's military revolution. If you enjoyed learning about this fascinating chapter of Japanese history, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. We have many more exciting stories about Japanese history and culture coming soon. Leave a comment below about what aspect of Nobunaga's innovations you found most surprising. We'd love to hear your thoughts.